What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video. Today we return to the On the Move series, episode number 3. Today we're talking about the 2021 wide receiver class, and it's a good one, no doubt about it. But before we talk about those wide receivers, I wanted to say thank you. We passed 20 subscribers on the channel. I know that's a small mark and it doesn't seem like much, but you got to start somewhere, and that's a milestone in my eyes. So I want to say thank you so much. If you are subscribed to the channel, it means the world to me. And if you have friends who like football and Madden content and sports in general, I implore you to share the channel if you enjoy it that much, and hopefully they enjoy it as well and will consider hitting that subscribe button. I also want to take this chance. It's pretty early on and we're far away from it, but once I hit 100 subscribers, I will give away a $25 gift card, PlayStation, Xbox, or just a Visa card, whatever the winner's preference is. So, definitely share with your friends or those close to you, and hopefully we can hit 100 subs very soon, and I'll do that for every 100 sub mark we hit, so 200, 300, 400, etc., until hopefully maybe one day we hit 1,000. Wouldn't that be something? But again, thank you so much for getting us to 20 subs. It means the world to me early on in this YouTube journey. All right, now that y'all got me all soft, let's go ahead and jump into the video. If you missed the first 2 episodes of the series, I highly encourage you to go back and check them out. We talked about the QBs that could be on the move as well as running backs in the last episode. And for those who haven't seen those or don't want to go back, I can understand. Basically, the point of this series is to have some fun theorizing where a good fit would be for these players. I'm not saying these players are going to leave where they're at now and these are the spots they're going to go to. It's more so fun to theorize what could be a good fit, what would be fun to see, what makes a compelling storyline, and that's kind of the whole point of the series. A lot of these players end up going back to where they already were, but let's have some fun. That's half the exciting part of the offseason for any sport, for that matter. I mean, just the idea of someone leaving and changing the complexity and how you look at that team and its franchise, that's a lot of fun, and that's what I'm trying to invoke here with this series. So we'll go ahead and start with wide receiver 1 of the free agent class, Allen Robinson. I mean, this guy's a stud, right? I mean, he's been doing it for so long with so many bad QBs, right? From Blake Bortles to then he gets in Chicago and he's dealing with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. He's 27 years old, and he's still like an all-pro caliber wide receiver with those guys throwing the football. So I'd love to see him find a spot where he can have an established QB and see the numbers explode from there. But man, also a really fun fit would be Washington. Him and Terry McLaurin would be one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. And McLaurin's really well-rounded. He really took that next step this past season. He's more than just a deep threat like he was his rookie year. He can do it at any spot. You can throw him the ball short, get him the ball in space, and have him do his thing. He can run those intermediate routes and get open, find soft spots and zones, and of course still has the speed to be a deep threat. So he's a complete wide receiver. He's a wide receiver 1, no doubt. But then if you were to just throw Allen Robinson into that mix, Washington has a good amount of cap room. They still need to figure out that QB position, but man, a perfect offseason if you were to sign Allen Robinson, find that QB of the future, draft a tackle in the first round. I mean, you would be looking at this Washington team as not only the front runner in the NFC East, but maybe potential dark horse Super Bowl candidate in the NFC. If all that played out like that, I think you would have to consider them at least in a bubble, top 5 teams in the NFC, something along those lines. But I'd love to see Allen Robinson end up in Washington, and I don't know, Washington football team's got the cap to do it. I think it's a good fit. It's a good idea. So our next wide receiver is going to be Chris Godwin, and I think he stays in Tampa Bay. Just disclaimer, he's probably a tag candidate, but man, the Jets got money to spend. In the running back video, I said they should go after Aaron Jones, and hey, dude, you got enough money to get Jones and Godwin. And I mean, this is a team, whether you're sticking with Darnold or moving on, you need to get some talent on the outside. I think Denzel Mims played well later in the year. He didn't have a huge sample size to pull from, but I did like what I saw. And they're probably going to move on from Jamison Crowder. Brashad Perriman is also a free agent, so they're already looking for answers on the outside to go along with Mims. And Chris Godwin could be your big play threat, with Mims being your physical guy, and then maybe in the second round you find a gadget player, a slot option, something of those sorts to try to add to this team's wide receiver core. And then that allows you, if you take Zach Wilson like I think they should at number 2, he's got plenty of weapons around him, something that Sam Darnold never had, and he would be very frustrated that the next QB in line would. But nonetheless, that's the draw of the NFL. I think Chris Godwin would be a slam dunk fit there in New York, and obviously a ton of cap money to spend, and an opportunity to build around a potential franchise superstar QB if they take Zach Wilson. Even if they stick with Sam Darnold, I think you need to get him weapons, and Godwin would certainly be that. Wide receiver number 3, Kenny Galladay. And I originally wanted to have Allen Robinson with the Ravens, but I saw something the other day on Twitter saying that the Ravens aren't interested. And I would assume that's because of their cap number. They don't have as much flexibility as a team like Washington would. So that would be my only rationale. Otherwise, they'd be crazy not to at least have a meeting with them. But, maybe a potential cheaper option is Kenny Galladay. He's still really young, 6'4", possession receiver, but also a good deep threat. I mean, Galladay does a lot of things well. He's a star in the making. If he's on the field, he is a really solid player, and he would be a really nice complement opposite of Marquise Brown. A little bit smaller, but has that boom or bust. I mean, the speed that you can't match on a football field. He's got that Tyreek Hill element to him. And if you were to have Galladay opposite him, that big body guy on 3rd down and 8, you can just throw him the football, vice grips for hands, and he can get you the first down, keep the drive alive. That's what this team desperately needs. Because they can be a run-focused team and be really good at it. But if a team like the Bills in the AFC divisional round get them behind the sticks and make them have 3rd and long situations and they're trailing in the second half, all that does not mix well for Baltimore. And some of it's Lamar, but some of it's also they just don't have somebody who can get open, who can be a big body and just win in a one-on-one matchup. And I think Galladay would be that fix to that problem. And he's young, so it's not like you're going out and signing somebody who's only going to be getting worse. Kenny Galladay, I think, has a lot of football left on him, and I think he still has a ceiling he hasn't hit yet, but he has to stay on the football field, of course. Moving on to Will Fuller, and I mean, I'm putting the Green Bay Packers here. They are in the negative when it comes to cap room, but nonetheless, we've been hearing that this Will Fuller Green Bay fit is potentially in the works, right? Like the Packers almost make the trade for him at the deadline, then they, hold off. I think it's a little foolish that Houston didn't try to get something for him. I mean, at this point, they might as well just move on from everybody, completely restart, be a new expansion team, start completely over. That's a joke, but Will Fuller to Green Bay. I mean, obviously, you talk about him opposite of Devontae Adams, a speed demon with a player like Adams. That's just not fair for a defense to try to have to come up with an answer for. Add on to that, I mean, MVS is a good player, and he's still under contract. And look at the big playability he brought to that team. Imagine Will Fuller. If he's healthy, and it wasn't just the PEDs that were boosting his performance and keeping him on the field, man, Fuller and Adams. I mean, you're already talking about potentially the best wide receiver in the game. And then Fuller, honestly, the way he played last year, he makes an argument for top 20 or better. He really does. And obviously, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I've been a fan of his for a while. And talent has never been the problem. Anybody around the league will tell you Will Fuller is a super talented player. He's just got to be able to stay on the field, and now he's got to prove it wasn't just PEDs that brought about the success last year. But if he's able to put those question marks and disclaimers to bed, him and Adams would be insane, and that's all with Aaron Rodgers throwing you the football. Come on, that's unstoppable. So moving on from Will Fuller, we'll go ahead and talk about JuJu SmithSchuster, and this one's tough for me to talk about because I think he does come back in Pittsburgh. It sounds like he wants to be a Steeler for his entire career, but that's good football talk. That's what players say when they're free agents. And he's also been linked to the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think that's a logical fit. This is a team that needs a big body wide receiver who can get open on those 3rd down and longs, knows how to find the soft spot in the zone, and JuJu's best skill set is his ability to get open, his route running, and he's got really nice hands. I mean, and the numbers were still solid these last 2 years. They just weren't as good as they were his rookie season when he had Antonio Brown on the roster. I still think he can be a wide receiver one, have to be a perfect spot for him, but if you were to just drop him on the Raiders roster, him and Ruggs, obviously a nice compliment. I still need one more player. Maybe they bring Nelson Agholor back for another 1-year deal, or maybe they just go try to find a big body freak to complete that core. Maybe they think it's somebody else they already have on the roster. I mean, we're also talking about a team with the 2nd best tight end in football in Darren Waller, so maybe JuJu's enough. Maybe they can stop there. But nonetheless, I think it makes a ton of sense, though the Raiders don't have a ton of cap room. And JuJu's a tough player to, gauge his market. Like, how much does he really command? He's only 24 years old, has plenty of playing time under his belt, which you like, but mixed production, I don't know. He's one of the toughest players to predict what his contract looks like. And I think the same could be said for our next player, Corey Davis. He's probably going back to Tennessee. I think the Titans would be smart to bring him back. Him and A.J. Brown have been fantastic together, especially last year, I should say. Corey Davis had that 5th-year option denied, and he kicked it into high gear, and now he's going to earn the money he gets this offseason. But New England's got a ton of cap room and a glaring need at wide receiver, and that's with Julian Edelman, and they might cut him, you know. I can see that as a cap casualty, though the Pats don't have to worry about money. I'm just saying logically, Edelman might be too expensive to even validate that use of money despite having a ton of it. That's another talk for another day. Corey Davis, brings a big play element to that team, and they just need a lot of receivers. Corey Davis wouldn't be just the only addition they would need to make, but he's good, he's young, and it obviously is a position of need for a team that has a ton of money to spend. I'd like to see it. I think this is more of one that I would want to see than might be realistic. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Which, on that note, if you enjoyed today's video, please hit that like button and comment your thoughts down below on where these wide receivers might go. And if you're new to the channel, I said this a little bit at the beginning, please consider hitting that subscribe button. That would help me out a ton. Okay, quick ad break over, essentially. Moving on to Curtis Samuel. Man, he's become a really fun player to watch. Liked how Carolina used him as this gadget/slot receiver. He's just fun player to keep your eyes on. And he's another young wide receiver that's hitting the market. And man, if the Colts could add him to their roster, I like that fit a lot. Michael Pittman can be your possession X wide receiver. Samuel can be the guy underneath running those short routes. You can just, run end arounds for him. Have him be a gadget player like the Carolina Panthers used him as. It would just add another dynamic to this team's offense. And plus, Frank Reich's a great play caller. So imagine him having Curtis Samuel at his disposal. That's just fun to theorize and imagine it happening. Plus, the Colts have a ton of money to spend. They need wide receiver. I think it makes a ton of sense. Moving on now to Antonio Brown. And this is another tough one to try to gauge, right? He's gone through a lot. At one point, he was the best receiver in football, and he was beginning to make an argument to knock on the door of Jerry Rice for best wide receiver. Once upon a time. That was a handful of years ago. They have the whole Raiders incident and the cryo chamber, and a ton of things transpire. But you look at his production at the end of last season, it was damn good. He really played well, and him and Brady have a good connection. I think it makes a ton of sense for him to go back to Tampa. At this point, I don't know if he plays for another QB other than Tom Brady, based off of Brady vouching for him and getting him back into the league. But I will say, Antonio Brown, born and raised in Miami, and the Dolphins have a need at wide receiver. So this is just me connecting random dots and thinking maybe it could lead to a possible connection, but this would then allow Miami to not address receiver in the first round, and if they were to go grab Antonio Brown, they're getting Albert Wilson back from opting out this past year. They have Allen Hurns also coming back for the same reason. Already have Devontae Parker. You might be looking at a good enough wide receiver room, get a new OC, and things are looking good for that offense. Maybe then they go Penei Sewell at 3, linebacker at 18 to replace Eldon Roberts. Right? Going wide receiver in free agency kind of opens up what they could do. Or maybe they go edge at 18 or whatever the case may be. Or maybe they trade that pick and get Orlando Brown or something like that. There's a ton of different doors this team could go through. And I think Antonio Brown or signing a wide receiver in general in free agency adds that many more options. And that's where this team that's its biggest strength right now. It's already a really good roster, a great coach, and they have a ton of different paths they could go down to be a very successful team. And that's what's exciting about the Dolphins. So I kind of like the idea of them adding Antonio Brown, hometown connection. Not much more to it than that. I don't think Brown leaves Tampa. Moving on to Marvin Jones, and hey, talking about a guy who really showed out filling in for Kenny Galladay. Jones put up some big numbers. If you played fantasy football at the end of last year and he was on your roster, you know what I'm talking about. And if you did daily fantasy sports, you know what I'm talking about. He was a great budget option late in the year. And I don't know if the Rams have the money to make this happen, but reportedly, he has interest in going to LA to reunite with Matt Stafford, and because of that, I said I like that idea. I'm going to go ahead and put it down in this video. It's already a pretty good wide receiver room, right? You already have Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and I like Van Jefferson a lot. I think he's due for a big year, so they probably don't need Marvin Jones, but he could be a really nice deep threat. They'd have to figure out the money, right? The Rams are negative $35+ million when it comes to the cap. So, there's a lot to work out there. And plus, plenty of other big contracts to pay out moving forward in this team's, run to a Super Bowl. But Marvin Jones would definitely be fun to have him in LA reuniting with Matt Stafford, keeping those two together. So, that's what I put in this video. But he's another tough player. I could see it going a lot of different ways. Next up is Sammy Watkins, and another difficult one because talent-wise, and especially around the NFL, he's one of those players who just is always in high regard. Teams love him. Players love him. Coaches love him. And I mean, talent-wise, you look at it and you're like, yeah. And he's 28. You're like, yeah, that should be a really nice wide receiver too. Like that him and JuJu should be right around the same playing field in a lot of ways. Do different things, but that's about where teams would evaluate him. But man, he just can't stay on the field, and it's been a constant problem. So that's why I put the Philadelphia Eagles here, right? They're also a team that's strapped for cash, and maybe, I don't know Watkins' market. I don't know what he's going to command. Maybe the Eagles can get him on a cheap, prove-it one-year deal. And because of that, they can also get Ja'Marr Chase at 7. And then Chase has a mentor in Watkins, someone who's been around the league for a handful of years, was a first-round pick with a lot of expectations around him, knows how to handle that pressure. But also, it's just, then you have 2 good receivers to see what Jalen Hurts can do with them, right? Like, this is the year to, like, find out if Jalen Hurts is your guy. So, put good weapons around him. Not, Watkins isn't elite, but he's a good player, and it allows you to get a feel for what Hurts can do for you in your offense. And maybe the fit there is really good, and Watkins enjoys playing in Philly, and then he'll sign a long-term deal or whatever. But I think this is an opportunity for him to get a 1-year deal, probably pretty cheap, just like someone else we'll talk about in Nelson Agholor here in a second. But an opportunity to prove himself, he can stay healthy, and he deserves big money. So I think it works for both sides. Next up is T.Y. Hilton. I have him going to the Arizona Cardinals. They have a little bit of money to spend. They're going to probably extend Chandler Jones, which might even create a little bit more cap relief. They're likely going to tag Hassan Reddick, so this number is going to probably come down from the little over $12.5 million that it's at right now. All these cap numbers are according to Spot Track. You can just Google NFL salary cap, and Spot Track's website will come up. So that's the source on all these numbers, by the way. But I think the Cardinals need a slot receiver, especially with Larry Fitzgerald maybe coming back. But even if he does, he's a fine wide receiver. But, maybe you're looking for that next step up. And I could see T.Y. Hilton signing a 1-year deal, chasing a ring, jumping on the hype that's surrounding Arizona right now. Maybe even a 2-year deal, and it's a team-friendly one at that. But Hilton could be your guy on the inside with Christian Kirk and D-Hop on the outside. That is lethal to talk about. And I think T.Y. Hilton still can fill that role. He's not the all-pro level wide receiver he once was, but I think he still has the skill set. If you put him in the right offense and ask him to do the right things, he can still be a very productive wide receiver 3 in this case for Arizona. So I like the fit, and I like the idea of him working on the inside, and then it just completes that offense. I mean, they could still use offensive line, but when it comes to skill position players, I think T.Y. Hilton would complete that group, realistically speaking. Obviously, you could put a bunch of different names and say this is an upgrade, but in a realm of reality, I think that would complete their skill group. After T.Y. Hilton comes A.J. Green, and this was the tough one. DeSean Jackson's going to be the last name we talk about, almost put him to the Chiefs, but Jackson and Tyreek Hill give you 2 of the same, but Hill just does it better, so I don't know. I could see Andy Reid reuniting with DeSean Jackson, and you can never have enough speed on a team, maybe, but I wanted to think something different here. A.J. Green, 6'4", different body build, and again, coming off a disappointing year, so maybe he's just looking for a 1-year prove-it deal like we talked about with Sammy Watkins, the potential former Chief, depending on how the offseason plays out. And it's an opportunity for A.J. Green to prove, hey, I still got it. I can do this. Or, he's into his mid-30s. Maybe it's an opportunity, hey, I'll play 1 more year. I want to win a Super Bowl and call it quits. I could see it either way. And I think either way, however Green is looking at his free agency, both those options are in play wherever he decides to go. And I think he's a nice compliment to Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs, sneakingly enough, wide receiver is a need. They have Hill and they have Kelsey, who are great, don't get me wrong. Maybe the best pass catcher duo in the NFL, I would say it is. But you can never have enough wide receivers. They'll probably bring Demarcus Robinson back, but I think A.J. Green just gives them a little something different that they don't have. And maybe Andy Reid can find 1 more year out of A.J. Green. He looked pretty bad and pretty washed last year, but maybe Andy Reid can find that secret in the equation. Second to last name we'll talk about, Nelson Agholor. Teased it a little bit earlier, but I definitely think he plays on a 1-year deal. Hits the market again next season when the cap goes back up. And he was really good for Vegas this past year. Had that home run potential that has always been there, but he cut down on the drops. That was what was killing him in Philadelphia. He cut down on those drops. And you know what? The Bengals need a wide receiver, and maybe they can get Agholor on that 1-year deal. And him, Higgins, obviously, nice compliment to one another. Agholor could be the deep threat guy. He could basically be what John Ross was supposed to be, but never panned out to hit that potential. And then you have Higgins. Maybe they go Ja'Marr Chase at 5. I think they should go offensive line, especially if they sign Agholor. But just talking about that team overall, if you had Higgins be the possession, Boyd be the slot, and Agholor be the deep threat guy, that is a gnarly trio. Maybe they go out and get a tight end too to really complete that pass-catching core. Also, Joe Mixon's a good pass catcher. That shouldn't be ignored as well. So I like the idea of Agholor, one-year deal, playing for a team that I think is a potential playoff dark horse next season, depending on Joe Burrow and if he can stay healthy. And last but not least, DeSean Jackson. And as mentioned, there's been a lot of rumors going around that maybe he'll want to play for his former coach, Andy Reid, in Kansas City. Maybe. But let's think a little outside the box here. The Saints have no room. So, I know this isn't logical to happen. -48, almost -$49 million for the New Orleans Saints. But, man, DeSean Jackson, give what New Orleans had in Ted Ginn. Those 50 catches a year, and almost all of them felt like a 40-plus yard bomb to the end zone. Nice speed complement opposite of players like Michael Thomas if they keep him, and Traquan Smith. There are rumors around Thomas, so don't think I'm crazy. I could see it. But, if DeSean Jackson's willing to go to a competitor, try to get a Super Bowl, will play for cheap, this could happen. And I think he would, if he could stay healthy, add a different element to this team. But it also depends on who's under center, right? If it's still Drew Brees, who has not yet retired, then, he's not going to be able to throw the ball that far down. D-Jack still has that speed. I don't know if Brees has the arm to keep up with it. But if it's someone like Jameis Winston, who can definitely uncork it, okay? Kind of an interesting thought experiment. Plus, those two played together in Tampa Bay, just throwing it out there. I could see DeSean Jackson playing for cheap in New Orleans, and I think that'd be a fun fit. But that's going to do it for the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Comment down below where you think these wide receivers are going to go. There's no right or wrong answer until we find out what happens in free agency. So give me your craziest theories about where these players could end up. And if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. That would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, like football content, Madden content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. That's all for the vid, everybody. Until next time, my name's Tej, and I'm signing off.
Part of the last generation that remembers time of God.